we accept that our council taxes are going up, but public sector staff, council workers, their hours are going down? Some councils have been accused of introducing an idler's charter. That's what Jacob Rees-Mogg called it. They let all desk-based employees reduce their working hours by 20% for the next year without any loss of pay. Local authorities insist that a pilot project has been a great success, and they have even extended it to binmen. It sounds like they've been marking their own homework there a bit, Ben.
Well,
Local authority votes to work less.
It's an extraordinary... once in a while a story comes along, or a policy change, a new law comes along, which absolutely makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up. And here we are in a cost of living crisis, people finding it incredibly hard to make ends meet. Council tax, and in this case Cambridgeshire's council tax, is up 5% this year. And they're effectively giving people a 20% increase in pay through the back door by not requiring them to work, at a time when there are fewer people in employment than there ever have been, 5.9 million people on universal credit. The economy is stuttering, it doesn't pay to work, and these people are being mollycoddled, sent home in an ever more socialist sort of way of thinking that, you can be paid 20% more to stay at home and what it is an admission that they weren't working hard enough in the first place.
Well, yes.
And if they've got a free day on their hands, they can roll their sleeves up and do some other work instead of sitting at home watching Netflix. I mean, I think it's an absolute outrage that, in any environment, but particularly this environment, they should be allowed to stay at home and maintain their pay. I cannot begin to understand what's going through the minds of people who made this decision.
Also, immediately there are concerns that, well, does that mean we're going to have less rubbish pickups? Does that mean that phones aren't going to be manned on Fridays? We already know that council workers have been very slow to get back to the office as it is.
There are several things here. One is the binman is only a consideration by Cambridgeshire County Council, I believe. On Thursday, there are local elections. If people don't like this, they have the opportunity to exercise their democratic right, providing they've got photo ID, which is another thing we could get furious about, and we'd probably agree on, and they can vote for a different council. So people can make their own minds up if they don't like it. There has been quite an extensive experiment across the board, from start-ups to big business to the Royal Biological Society and a whole range of other things about 4-day weeks. And what they overwhelmingly found was that productivity went up and sickness absence dropped by 2/3.
So fine. Move to a 4-day week. Pay them 80% of what they were earning.
Why?
Why?
Because...
Why?
Hang on. Neither of you know, unless you're going to correct me now, whether they're combining the hours into the 4 days instead of spreading them out.
No, they're forgiving 20% of their working hours.
That's your interpretation.
Well, that's what the policy says.
No, it's working hours, whether that's 4 days a week or whether
an
it's
extended lunch
6 hours a day instead of 8, I don't know. It may depend on the role. But the problem is that councils need to be functioning 5 days a week. I mean, how many times have you tried... I mean, maybe people at home have done this. When you try to call the council for something, I don't know, whether it's a bin delivery or you're trying to pay your council tax and you can't do it online for one reason or another, and you can't get through.
Well, actually, I don't even know what councils do, actually. They just levy a whole load of charges on us.
What they do...
They do trials like this.
Yeah, they do trials like this.
I think... I actually am a great supporter of local government, and I think it's really, really badly maligned. And I have this argument with Michelle all the time because she will not vote, she says, in the local elections on Thursday. Local government touches our lives in ways that central government
Well, it's going to touch us 20% less in Cambridgeshire.
Well, it may be, but if that means that they can recruit and retain more...
Oh, Jo, come on. No, come on. Please, Jo. Please,
OK.
I really... how can you pay someone the same amount of money and require them to work 20% less?
How can you have people coming into work who are taking time off but not sufficiently a length of time that they need to have a doctor's note or something, the odd couple of days, or there's a problem with, you've got that absenteeism, which causes huge problems. If you've got people who are working because they can organise their work-life balance... Now, you know, I know people laugh at it and they think it's a load of old nonsense and wokery. If you've got kids, if you've got elderly relatives, if you've got other responsibilities...
Yeah, it'd be great. I would, you know, I think most people would like to work less or have an extremely flexible job. But you have to make a sacrifice if you want that, don't you? You have to choose a part-time job. You have to work for yourself.
And you're at liberty to do that.
Whereas council jobs, if they are required to be 5 days a week,
they
should be, really, then why would you do this? It seems to me that this is totally an ideological pursuit from the Liberal Democrats because they think that everyone should only have to work 4 days
ultimately...
a week.
One of the reasons that people have been reluctant to go back to work after lockdown and furlough and everything else is because of the flexibility that it gave them. We have talked on this programme on many occasions about the cost of childcare.
The ultimate direction of travel of this kind of way of thinking is everyone staying at home and not working.
Well, no, it's not.
And the state basically handing out benefits.
No, it's
and
not.
everything being
Also,
wealth redistribution.
Do you know what? If any sort of... most ambitious people, do you know what they'd do? They'd take their 100% pay for working 4 days and then they'd get another job. That's what I would do.
That's what I would do.
I would do, and then I'd be making 120%, 130% of what I was earning.
And cock a snoop at the local
I'd definitely
council.
do that. You know, you could get a job Ubering around for that day or doing something else, starting your own business.
People working when they're supposed to be there instead of taking a day off. You know, you've worked in business long enough, Ben, and I'm sure you don't tolerate it, but I have worked in organisations where it's very easy, somebody's off sick, or there's a problem with the kids, or they've got to go early, or this, that and the other. And actually, they're so unproductive, they might as well not be there. So if you actually say to people, right, you do 4 days a week...
But then why not
I
3
worry
days
about
a week,
the bigger implications of this on the economy. We know in lots of towns and cities in this country, the public sector is crowding out the private sector. If you're making these jobs even more cushy... and they're still getting the same pay for working less. What hope is there for people to start
you've hit the nail on the head.
Starting businesses?
The public you've hit the nail on the head. The public sector...
Oh, wow, I feel like I've been told by...
but the public sector is no longer a guardian of the private sector. The public sector is in competition with the private sector. It's in competition with it for talent. It's in competition for employees. It's in competition with the private sector for capital. That's why it's taxing the hell out of the private sector. That's why it needs interest rates down, because it wants to be able to borrow cheaply so it can do all its state interventionist policies, including ridiculous ones like this, paying people 20% more for less work. It makes no sense.
It makes absolutely no sense, but let's see, lots of people have been getting in touch. I think this angers quite a lot of people, actually. Bernard said, council should not have the power to make working hours decisions with public money. Ian says, if councils are going to reduce their working hours, then perhaps we should pay less council tax. Good point. Robert says, I agree, let them work 4 days a week, but at 12-hour days, at least we will get more bucks for our pounds. But the problem is we need Monday to Friday, don't we, for most things. Ian says, public sector workers should be put on performance-related pay. Binmen would soon be due a pay increase, but some of their managers would deservedly get massive pay cuts. Well, that's another problem just with the public sector in general. If you do a really good work, can you get a bonus? Can you get better pay than someone else on your level? Well, it's also socialised.
I think that's a really fair point, that the people who are actually doing the front-end jobs, or actually, if it's a binman, the back-end jobs, because you're back of the truck.
Yeah,
exactly. But, they are working, emptying the bins, doing all of that stuff. It's not a particularly pleasant job. The people who run the tips and the... what do you call them? Yeah, tips.
Yeah.
Those things. Social workers. We know there's a desperate shortage of social workers. People who are doing assessments for elderly people and people with disabilities who need specialist care. There's not enough of those people, but there is no doubt that there are a lot of people at a certain managerial level who are spending a lot of time reinventing the wheel, having lots of meetings, writing lots of reports.
Feeling very important.
But then sack them. Don't send them home for a day's extra pay.
Well, hang on, let's listen. Someone who works at a local council has got in touch. Craig, thank you for writing in. He says, well, he doesn't actually agree with you, Joe. He says, I work for a local council and I finish at 12:30 on Fridays in time for lunch. That is early enough to finish a working week. No need for 4-day weeks. So he's already got half a day off on a Friday. So, which is quite nice, to be honest. I mean, to be honest, I do think in a lot of workplaces, Friday afternoons do get a little bit a little bit lost if people are honest. Perhaps not those who work for Ben Habib.
Well, I think in times of economic difficulty, and we are in serious economic difficulty at the moment, don't underestimate the problems the country is facing.
Yeah.
Massive debt, high taxation, high inflation, we all have to put our back into it and work more, not less.
Right, we've all got to work more. I'm not sure how that will go down well. But it's an impassioned stance there. Anyway, coming up, if you were a fan of hoodies, wearing hoodies, then don't go